2 years ago, I used to work as a pizza delivery guy. I had been working as a pizza delivery guy for a year, and some months before, I had a horrible encounter. That night, I received an order to deliver 6 boxes of extra-large pizza to a location I'd never been to. To be honest, I didn't want to make that delivery because it was almost my closing time, but seeing that there was no one else to take the order since my other colleagues were all out to make delivery as well, I had no choice but to take it. About 10 minutes into the drive, I remembered that one of my colleagues who was familiar with that location had once mentioned a shortcut, and at that moment, I really needed that shortcut. Instead of following the normal route that would have taken me there with no stress, I followed the shortcut. The shortcut turned out to be a very dark road with no car in sight, and it was weirdly quiet. The moment I saw how quiet the shortcut was, I should have just turned around and followed the normal bustling route with lots of cars and people on it. But because I wanted to go back home on time to catch a football match I've been anticipating, I ignored everything I'd seen and proceeded with the shortcut, with the expectation that I'd bump into a car or two as I went down the road. Another weird thing was, all of this happened around 8:45 p.m., and I should have known that it was a red flag for a road to be that quiet and deserted by that time. As I drove down that shortcut, I had this eerie feeling as if someone or something was watching me. To get my mind off that feeling, I increased the volume of my car radio to get into the moment, hoping that the feeling would be gone after a song or two. Still, it didn't go away. Instead, it got worse, and I could feel goosebumps all over my body. All of a sudden, for no reason, I began to breathe heavily and felt an intense pain in my chest. It was so bad that I had to pull over at the side of the road to really understand what was going on. Immediately, I pulled over with my headlights still on. The radio signal began to fluctuate, and it was acting weird. My hands were shaking so badly that I could barely hold the wheel, and I didn't even realize this until I pulled over. After I pulled over, I was busy stabilizing my breathing when my eyes mistakenly caught something in my rearview mirror. It was as if someone was standing at the back of my car and staring at me. I swear, I literally saw someone standing there. For a moment, a part of me wanted to step out and check if it was someone who needed help, but after remembering all the terrible stories of things that happen on deserted roads, like the one I was on, I sped off without thinking twice. Thank goodness my car was still on. When I had gotten to a safe distance, I summoned the courage to look at my rearview mirror again, and whatever I'd seen was gone. I was so freaked out that I thought my mind was playing tricks on me for a moment. A couple of days later, I told one of my spiritual freak friends what I had seen, and she claimed I must have encountered a spirit. She explained that encountering a spirit must have caused the intense breathing, sudden pain in the chest, and the radio signal misbehaving. Honestly, I don't know what to believe, but I know I encountered something unusual that night. Also, from that day until the day I resigned as a pizza delivery guy, I never used shortcuts again, not even in broad daylight. Driving at night had been one of my hobbies since I was a teenager. In fact, it wasn't just me. My friends and I enjoyed driving to random places at night after hanging out together, but all of that stopped after we had an experience that almost claimed our lives. For more context, I'm a 22-year-old college student, and all my friends are in the same age group. 2 months ago, I and 2 of my friends went to a birthday party, and we all drove in my car. The birthday party lasted until 11 a.m., and instead of returning to our hostels, one of us, Maggie, suggested that we just drive to a random place so we could enjoy the cool night breeze and also smoke and gossip about the birthday party we had just returned from. Since driving to random places was something we'd done a lot in the past, there was no reason to say no to her suggestion. Without a specific location in mind, I drove us to the first place, where we spent about 10 to 15 minutes circling the area. Initially, the agreement we all had was to stay out until 12, and once it was 12, we'd start heading back to our hostels. So after spending a little time in the first location, we drove down to another location, and that's where we all experienced something that shook us. The second location we drove to was still around the same axis as the first location. It's just that the first location was more of a city or urban area, and the second location was close to the woods, and only a few houses could be seen. After we had gotten to the second location, we decided to get out of the car, sit on the bonnet, and smoke. We did this because the whole vicinity was so peaceful and quiet, and the chances of anyone disturbing our peace was slim. About 5 minutes after we'd gotten out of the car and began to smoke, we spotted very sharp headlights of a car driving in our direction. From the angle of the headlights, we could tell it was a personal truck, but that wasn't all. Even from where we sat, we could hear loud, disturbing music coming from the truck as it drove closer. Just to be safe, Nancy, the other girl with us, suggested that we get back into my car and wait for the truck to drive past us, and that's what we did. A minute after we'd gotten into my car to wait for the truck to drive past, the truck got close to us, but it didn't drive past us like we expected. The driver of the truck stopped his truck beside my car and asked if we were having car trouble. 2 other men were with him in the truck, and they had long, bushy beards. From the stench that came out of the truck, the girls and I could tell that they'd been drinking a lot, which explained why they were being a nuisance. When the driver kept asking questions, I responded as politely as possible to get him off our back, and after what seemed like 4 minutes of questioning, they drove off. We were so relieved as soon as they drove off, and the girls suggested we go out and have one last smoke before returning to our hostels. Just as we were about to get out of the car for another smoke, we spotted the truck approaching us from the back. We could tell from the headlights that it was the same truck. We didn't feel good about it this time. Again, we hopped back into the car, and without waiting to see what would happen, I turned on my car and the headlights and waited to see if the truck would drive past us. As they got closer, the driver pulled over behind my car, and the 3 men came out. "Hey, we wanted to know if you girls would love to hang out with us. We live down the road," the driver said. Coming out of the truck allowed us to assess the men more. If I'm not mistaken, they all looked like they were in their early 40s. "No thank you," I responded. But it seemed like the men didn't want no for an answer. "Don't worry, we won't bite," one of the guys tried to convince us, but hearing that alone confirmed that they wanted to do something to us. "No thank you," I said, and this time around I drove off at a speed. When I drove off, I thought they would just back off and leave us alone. But no, they ran back into the truck and followed us. Jeez, it was so terrifying, and I couldn't stop thinking that I would crash into a tree or hit another car because of how fast I drove. Thankfully I didn't, and the main road wasn't too far from where we were, and the moment I dashed into the busy road, the men stopped following. We finally made it back to our hostel, but we were so shaken that we didn't talk about it until the next day. I don't care what anyone tells me, but those men wanted to harm us, and I have no idea what would have happened to us if we hadn't managed to get away. That night still freaks me out to this day. Since then, none of my friends have suggested that we go out for a night ride, and I don't think they will anytime soon.